Richard McCormack was a man of routine. He would rise out of bed, brush his teeth, wash his face, put on clothes and shoes, and welcome another day. Later, he would meditate in front of his shrine, a collection of beloved artefacts essential to his sensory stimuli, and in this manner experience the world as it is. He would listen and feel and think, a sifting of emotions and intellectual reasoning in his very own makeshift brain machine. But life had not always been kind to Richard McCormack.
Get a dog, dickhead.
As a kid, they would bully him, call him names, act like despicable predators, demonstrating an inhumanity that would bring tears to Jesus Christ's eyes. But if the world was entirely black, like the darkest of dark nights, we should all perish. Acts of kindness may be invisible sometimes, or perhaps we just take them for granted, but they do make us move in some direction, though we don't know why. And for absolutely no reason at all, life goes on. Then, one night, during his customary meditation, Richard McCormack had a vision. It came to him as effortlessly as the wind that sweeps the barley and shakes it into a slow, harmonious dance. It was the ghost of an intoxicated, elusive dream of years long past. It said, "As far west as you can imagine, there's a giant upon a rock. Touch it, and you shall see with your eyes, which was always God's plan, from the beginning to the end." "How do I find the way?" replied Richard McCormack eagerly. "Go," said the ghost. "Pay homage to the great poet of Kilbarron, and seek your way over the river, where people's sacred memories are kept forever. Trust thyself, dear brother, and you will find the great giant upon the rock." The inebriated meditation still lingered in him hard, and he felt a strong inclination to rise from the ashes and move with the easterly winds. Richard McCormack was contemplating the plaque with the poem when a man came up to him and offered to read the poem for him. Richard McCormack answered affirmatively and thanked him for the unsuspected generosity. When the man had finished reading the last verse, Richard McCormack said that it had moved him greatly. To that, the humble man replied, "It might be that you see the same thing as the poet himself." "Yes," was his short reply, while he handed the man his bottle of whiskey, and the three of them all drank and cheered and felt the presence of understanding and brotherhood. As Richard McCormack was about to take his leave, the good-natured man asked him where he was headed. "I'm on my way to see the great giant upon the rock way out west," said Richard McCormack. "Oh," said the man, with a blend of excitement and relief, "if you will permit me, it would be an honour to follow you there." The roads were narrow and crooked. The landscape came upon the two drifters both vertically and horizontally, as they passed the time of day in philosophical discussion and drinking. "What is the crux of the disability of blindness?" the man at one point asked Richard McCormack. "The desire to see." He then went on to tell him of his vision and his encounter with the ghost and why he wanted to touch the giant upon the rock. When they reached the river in the early morning hours, the man insisted, in his own particularly gentle manner, that they'd pay the broad, majestic Shannon its respect by having a drink with it. And so they drank to its health and stumbled across to the other side and fell asleep in a field. When they awoke a little later, the day proceeded in much the same way as the previous one. However, whether it by celestial or earthly circumstance bestowed upon their fate, there was not a drop of whiskey left, and the long walk that lay before them seemed an easier task now that the poisoned drops were gone. "When you get your eyesight back," said the man, "the first thing you should do is gaze out on the mighty blue ocean. It is the fairest colour ever perceived by mankind." "How do you know it's blue?" inquired Richard McCormack. "Blue is just a four-letter word. Is the ocean also blue in the middle of a dark winter's night?" The man hesitated and struggled to give him a detailed account of the matter, and simply said, "No, it's got more of a black touch to it then." He then fell into a silent abyss while he pondered the greater implications of his answer. They roamed westwards through the land, only stopping to mix their gin and tonic on the ancient stones that had been piled up by hand by people with strong bodies and an even stronger spirit. The walls stretched for miles and miles along the narrow roads, fencing in their labour, lives and imagination. At last they reached the great giant upon the rock. They stood before it for a while, contemplating its prominence. "Well," said the man, "this is it." Richard McCormack walked up to it and knelt before the monument. He then proceeded by placing his right hand on the cold stone. Not a word was spoken, and the noise from the cars and the sounds from the surrounding nature meshed with their blurry alcoholic meditation. He held his hand there for a while, before he got up and stood in silence alongside the man, waiting, as if they were prisoners of war in front of a firing squad. "I didn't expect it," Richard McCormack said at last, to the wind, to God, to the ocean, and to whoever were listening. "I didn't expect it." They sat down to breathe in the breeze coming from the ocean. "What a lovely evening it is, my dear friend," said the man. "I'll be forever indebted to you for allowing me to be your travelling companion. The giant is only a rock," he continued, "with a couple of modifications, of course, but still just a rock. Think no more of it." "Yeah, it's bonkers," said Richard McCormack. "Why would any sane person believe it possessed magical powers, or, for that matter, why would anyone go through the trouble of creating such a thing at all?" "I suppose," uttered the man mildly, "for no good reason at all." "I can see it so clearly now," said Richard McCormack. "I've been able to see all my life. I can imagine things incomprehensible to most people. Yeah," he said enthusiastically, "I do believe there's a ghost out there, and that it indeed is haunting us. It's haunting us for our ignorance and stupidity." "That is truly so, my dear friend," said the man. "That is truly so."
Tell me, are monsters real? Do dragons roar? Will you be here for me, or just sticking notes up on my door? You know I can see what I fear the most. Those silence has no color and emptiness, our war without blood. Tell me that you will fill the space between us while we dream on down the flood. The ghosts will fall asleep now. They won't fool us anymore.